Hi guys, this is Leathercraft 209. Just wanted to post a quick video update on a project I'm working on. It's a project for Javier, and he wanted a custom-made tool pouch that attaches to the belt. So he sent me his tools actually, and the belt case pouch, I guess. Just to kind of show you what we're working with. So I did do a rough template just out of cardboard. And this kind of represents the back loop, right? The backing. So I kind of want to go over some leather options, some design ideas really quick. And this is for Javier, but if someone else is watching and is interested in the custom pouch, it's just good information for you to have in case you order from me. So we want something that's really durable and at the same time that holds the tools without them slipping out. And I did I took each tool out and I looked at how the pockets were laid out and how the elastic or whatever works. So let's kind of go over the options and just kind of think about the kind of leather you want to use and the design. So for the back piece, the thought was to use veg tan, and so just to show you really quick, this is vegetable tan leather, and it comes in different thicknesses, right? So this is 6 to 7 ounce. This is just a sample I have, but it is this one has some thickness to it. I don't know if you can see that or not. It's a 6 to 7 ounce. I believe it's less than 1/8, but a little bit more than 1/16. So it's in the middle. It's a middleweight leather, And the idea for making this was I would do basically 2 layers of this, so kind of sandwiched together, right? So it gets pretty thick then, But it'd be 2 layers of this. Would make the back piece, right? So I would cut out 2 identical pieces, glue them together, and then stitch them together. And then the belt loop section would be this really thick, kind of 2-layered belt, belt closure like that. Now this leather, the 6 to 7 ounce that I have has some good flexibility. Sometimes when you dye leather, veg tan leather, it gets a little stiff. So like, if you look at my watch band really quick, it's been dyed, and it has this kind of like a rigid feel to it. And so you will have some of that once I dye this black. You will have that kind of rigidity, I guess. But that's also a good thing because it will make for a solid piece. But just to be aware, if once I dye this and I double lay it with the same thickness, I may go with, so this is 6 to 7 ounce, I may go with 6 to 7 ounce and then a 4 to 5 ounce leather, just to play with. I'll play around with a couple options to see what works. So for the back, yeah, I would definitely want to use a veg tan that is stiffer once it's dyed, and you have a nice rigid back plate. When forming the pouches though, and this is where it's a personal choice, so forming these pouches, for example, right, my first thought was to use vegetable tanned leather, so more 6 to 7 ounce, maybe 4 to 5 ounce, which is a little bit thinner, and to kind of form the pouches from it, right? And there's 2 ways to do it. One is to what's called wet forming. So just to give you an example, this is an iPhone case I'm working on, right? iPhone 5, and it has an OtterBox, right? The OtterBox is a larger, but they're a biker and they wanted something really strong, whatever. So this is what's called wet molded leather, right? So I form it around basically a shape, and it will get glued down, obviously, like this. And this is I'm in the middle of doing it, but just to show you, right? It's basically formed. Okay, so same idea as this. This has more play. This does not have as much play. It has some tension, but the way when you design a wet molded, wet formed leather is it's meant to be rigid. So this works out nice for like holsters or like phone cases like this where you want to protect what's in it. So a bump from the outside isn't really gonna affect it, and it slips in nicely, creates a nice shape. So that's one way to do it. And what that would require though is each tool or each set of tools would need to be wet formed. So I would get this, for example, and whatever. And what I would do is I would get the vegetable tan leather. Let me find it again really quick. And I would basically, it would get wet molded to these, depending on how we laid it out, right? So let's pretend it was like that. And it would, and when this leather was wet, it would get formed basically to this, and it would keep its shape like this. Now, there's pros and cons to this. One is if you're doing a lot of, let's say, crawling on the ground or in a crawl space or something, this is going to be rigid. It's going to be, bumping out, and same thing with this thing, right? So I would kind of wet form this around to make like a little sheath or whatever, and it would be either multiple pieces, right? So this would have its own piece of leather, right, and it would be stitched down onto the main backing, or it'd be one single piece that I would try to wet form together in a row. But anyway, the good side about that is, it's a nice rigid case. You don't have anything really floppy, it would stay basically in this shape, right? So, you would always be able to slip in and out. The downside of it is there's not a whole lot of flexibility. So if you're in a crawl space or for whatever reason you are up against the wall trying to reach for something, a wet formed holster pouch won't have the flexibility that the other options will. So that's one way to do it, right? It will provide a nice formed surface. The other is to do more of a generic, right? So using the same vegetable tan leather, instead of wet forming it, just stitching down pouches, right? Stitching down the sections, and the leather would be dyed, of course, and then I would oil it, right, and to put the flexibility back into it, and it would be just stitched, and it would be pouches, kind of like that, obviously. And then the deal with that is it's more flexible. You would have more play in each piece. So that's the other way to do it, and you could combine that with elastic, because in your tool pouch I realized that some of the tools are held in by elastic. So I do have some heavy duty elastic. This is like 2 inches, 1.5 inches, whatever. So I could put that in. So let's say I made one big pouch, right here. So this was the one big pouch. Within that I could have elastic holders also, right? It's the option. Or I could have, this could be wet molded, like the whole chunk is wet molded, and then where it's hard, and then on the inside it could be elastic paired with, which is option number 3. Oh, let me grab it really quick. So this is called oil tan leather. This is the stuff they make motorcycle chaps from, and it's actually a little bit thicker than most biker clothing. But this is also this is about 5 to 6 ounce, so it's a little bit thinner than the 6 to 7, but it's still really durable. It has some good stretch to it, right? It's very flexible. It's called oil tan because it's infused with oil when they tan it in the tannery, and so it got some really good resilience. Very water resistant. I mean, it's not waterproof, but so it's really durable leather. I like using this stuff for cases, and the thing is, it's nice and soft too, right? But it still has a nice thickness to where you don't have to really worry about a whole lot of like ripping, very easily. So the other option number 3, is to use oil tan leather to form the pouches. So if the back is going to be vegetable tanned, right, which is this, it'll be dyed black. The tools will be on top, right? So pretend like these are the tools. Okay, and we can form the pouch using a wet mold method, right, where there's a big general pouch over the top, and then each individual pouch could be with something like this, right? So it's probably hard to tell. Let me see if I can get this. Okay, that might be too bright, but it gives you the idea. Right, so then each section or whatever would be, made from this on the inside or even on the top, right? So one option is just to make this black and have all the pouches made of this oil tan leather, and kind of stitched and layered on top how your original pouch is, and this will still be very durable stuff. The other option is to do a wet mold using vegetable tan, and there's two ways to do it. One is to wet mold each single piece, right, each section. The other is to make a general wet mold, like a big large one that's a hard layer, and then within that have these pouches. Now if you do that, it does make for a thicker belt pouch, so it's something to be aware of. But yeah, so I kind of want to show you the leather options that I would want to use for this. So yeah, oil tan, and I could even line the back, right? If you look at the back right now, it's like a suede. I could put a thin liner on here too to make it smoother, so tools are easier to get in and out. But I know one of the concerns you have was tools falling out, and so if it's got this nice suede back to it, it probably actually work in your favor from keeping stuff from slipping in and out. But yeah, so that would be stitched, that would be stitched, that would be stitched. Yeah, personally, I'm kind of favoring the oil tan, just because I think, on a tool, the reason that, if you look at leather tool pouch, for the most part, they're made of that softer, more pliable leather. Because, if you switch out, and let's say we wet mold this, right? We use this, we wet mold these tools, and they're formed perfectly to each one, okay? If you switch out tools, you may have an issue, right? Because since it's a wet formed, right? Wet formed, specifically to whatever it is, right? Each tool, that if you switch out, you can have an issue. So, for example, this blade thickness on this spreader knife thing. If you get another one that is, even a ½ inch thicker, and I wet molded the leather to this one, right? Let's say I've wet molded it and I've stitched it down, and it's perfectly formed, and when you take this out and you go to put in a bigger one, you're gonna have an issue because basically formed it to this shape. Same thing with this. Same thing with any one of these items, including these, right? The other thing about wet forming is, you're gonna have this thick layers, right? So, it could add some thickness to your belt. I mean, you can see this already wants to expand. It's already, So the wet form would kind of account for that, and like you would have a couple, a couple layers of this on top of each other, right? On the base layer, and then another one for this pouch, So yeah, my issue with that would be though, is if each one was wet formed to the tools you provided, that if at some point you want to switch out a tool, or the tool was shaped a little different, or whatever, different thickness, that something that is wet formed to these tools, you may have a harder time switching out and putting different tools in. If it's so specifically wet formed to each handle, to each blade or whatever, and I've stitched it down, that when you try to switch out a different type of utility knife, you might have an issue. So that is why, even though the wet forming method is, when I do like a holster or a knife sheath, that works for that, gun or for that knife. But for tools like this, where, if this breaks or you lose it or whatever, and you're gonna replace it with something else, it may or may not be the exact one, right? It may be just a slight difference in shape, or a slight difference in the handle could throw off the wet molded tool. So that's why my thought is to either make this more of a general, like a big general pouch with elastic and oil tan forming separate pouches with with this over the top of it, right? And then this would make the tools loops within there, and using like elastic on the edge. So let's see, like for the glove, for example, the glove strap, right? My thought was to get some leather strap. And I would dye it black, obviously, and then but on the edge would be elastic, right? So even though most of the strap would be leather, right? And let's pretend this is the back side of it, whatever. A small part of it would be elastic, so it would go right here. And when you wanted to put your gloves in or your tools in or whatever, when I designed the pouch, it would be stitched onto here so that you would have some room for adjustment, right? So when let's say you put your gloves in or you're putting this tool in, right? So that the strap would be formed to this, or roughly shaped to this, but that this would be stitched on, and then the elastic would be stitched onto this part, so that just a small area right here, the small seam, you would have some play. So then if you want to shove the ruler, let's say, it would stretch to make it, and same thing with the gloves. So hopefully that makes sense. So imagining the elastic stitched down, and the leather coming over the top, stitching it, forming the loop, right? And then when you need it to stretch, it would stretch just a little bit, right? Because there's a thread holding it here, and there's a thread holding it here. You just have a little bit of play. And then the rest of the strap, the outer part, would be leather. Anyway, so some things to think about: wet forming, the type of leather you might want to use. Personally, I kind of like this paired with 2 layers of this for the backing. I was looking at where your most wear happens, and we could even do a combination, because this will all be all dyed black. Is to do the combination of using this as a backing, using this for part of the general case, and then reinforcing it with this, right? So I don't know if you can understand what I mean by that. So this would be the pouch, but then the whole pouch section would be covered by this, but on each individual compartment would be the oil tan. So anyways, there's lots of combinations we could try. I just wanted to kind of show you the leather options, and the 3 potential options I thought of was wet molding, not wet molding it, but using this as a general pouch and combining it with elastic and this to make the individual compartments, or using the oil tan all together, the black leather, and making that just the front. It'd be all this. This front pouches would be from that black oil tan. But if you want something super durable, my thought is to combine both. So this would be used for the backing, right? 2 layers of this, and then one general pouch. So for example, I was looking in here, right? So this main section right here, let's say we use this leather for that, but on the inside, would you use the oil tanned black combined with some elastic? So then it would still be strong from the leather, and you still have some play to allow your tools to adjust. And then same thing over here. Make another small general section, and then each compartment, this compartment, could be with the oil tan, if that makes sense. Or it could just be, actually this front could just be oil tan altogether, and then like an oil tan strap with elastic just right here, so that there was enough play for different types of gloves. Anyway, I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions, let me know. I have the template, so I'm going to start working on the back piece, which will be this 6 to 7 ounce paired, layered together with either another 6 to 7 ounce or 4 to 5 ounce. I'm gonna see how pliable 2 layers of 6 to 7 ounce are, because you want some flexibility in the belt loop, right? You want it to have a little play. Alright, if you have any questions, Javier, let me know. Hopefully this video makes sense. I know it's a little long, I apologize. Okay, bye.